Thank you for tuning in to the Free Thought Channel. My name is Mike Scott. I'm your host. Today I'm going to be discussing the topic of the election, the 2020 election. Right now, mainstream media is talking about only two candidates in the race, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Today I want to talk about a third candidate for the Green Party, Howie Hawkins. But before we get into that, I want to make it clear that I am not supporting Joe Biden. I am not supporting Donald Trump. I am a lifelong Democrat, former chair of the party, the Democratic Party in my county. And it's important for me to point that out because the question of credibility always comes up whenever you discuss issues like this. It's easy for someone to label me some sellout Republican who is now trying to get you not to vote for Joe Biden and to vote for Donald Trump. Let me be clear. I agree with Nita Turner. I won't use the profanity that she used in the Politico article, but she basically said Donald Trump is a whole bowl of shit and Joe Biden is a half a bowl of shit. So I'm not supporting any candidate. But today I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to show you why. There's one more credential I want to point out to you. I was also appointed by the county commission as the only Democrat on the Board of Elections in my county back in 2015. So when it comes to credibility, I don't think anyone would argue that I know what I'm talking about in terms of politics as it relates to partisan politics, Democrats and Republicans. All right, so with that said, the problem that I have with Joe Biden asking for my vote after 40 years of being Republican-like and just about every piece of legislation that he has supported or written is problematic. And when you bring that up, the argument is typically, you know what, it's the lesser of two evils. And that argument has been used, particularly in my community, for the last 50, 60 years. And so we have been settling time and time again for people that don't have our best interests at heart. Now, in terms of Joe Biden, one of my major issues with him is that he hasn't changed. But before I show you some video footage that goes back decades in terms of his position, I want to show you some recent video footage of Joe Biden. And then we can discuss some of the older footage, or we can review some of the older footage. So here's Joe Biden on the campaign trail, most recently.
Another thing about how perspectives change over time. Bobby Rush, member of Congress, said the other day, I'm ashamed that I voted for the 94 crime bill. You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all. And in fact, I drafted the bill, as you remember.
I know that.
And by the way, we talk about this mostly in terms of Black Lives Matter.
All right. So there you have it, the level of arrogance. Bobby Rush, congressman out of Illinois, is sorry for voting for the 1994 crime bill. The crime bill that put tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of black men, Latino men in prison disproportionately for decades. A crime bill that he is unapologetic about. In fact, as you can see from this interview, he's boastful. He wrote it, and he did write it, and Bill Clinton signed it. You can only get away with doing these kind of horrible things in this country as a Democrat. Now, I'm going to show you that. I'm not just going to tell you that. I'm going to show you time and time again that Democrats can get away with policies and legislation that Republicans cannot get away with. In other words, when it comes to the crime bill, NAFTA, welfare reform, those were all Democratic ideas or Democratic policies implemented by Democrats. And the Democratic Party, the rank and file, basically goes to sleep. They take a narcotic when their man is in office. And when Joe Biden was a senator from Delaware, he sponsored the crime bill along with some other things I'm going to discuss today, but particularly the crime bill. And when he was in the White House with Barack Obama, same thing. There are things that I can show you very clearly that if Republicans had had these same policies, that Democrats would have been up in arms. But back to Joe Biden in this article or interview.
Black lives really do matter, but the problem is institutional racism in America. That's the overarching problem that still exists, and we should be talking about it. And you look at it, the legacy of racism in housing and jobs and so on.
All right, institutional racism. The crime bill became a part of the institution known as the criminal justice system. That is institutional racism at its apex, Mr. Biden. Housing, education, those things are directly impacted if you have a criminal record. In other words, the way the crime bill was written, and you can look this up, felons did not have access to public education grants, loans, or private education grants and loans for that matter. They're denied opportunities in the employment workspace. They are denied opportunities in housing because they have a criminal record. And that 1994 crime bill made it mandatory for people to, serve 85% of their sentences on a federal level. Now, he's going to argue and he has argued that the states implemented it and they went further. They went further because they were incentivized on a federal level to mirror or adopt state policies that mirrored federal policies. So all across this country, the prison industrial complex exploded because of the 1994 crime bill, because there was federal money available for states that implemented policies that mirrored the crime bill. So he's been totally disingenuous in that regard.
If you want to pull the party...
This video is so important that I'm about to show you. Everybody is probably familiar with Lawrence O'Donnell to a degree. He is a commentator on MSNBC. But he makes a great point in this video that I think needs to be pointed out. And then I'm going to show you these other Joe Biden videos. But this is the state of our party. This is the state of the Democratic Party. And you know what? It's getting to the point now where the policies of the Democratic Party have become so right-wing since the early 1990s that I'm not sure I can continue to say it is my Democratic Party, although I want to say that, because they're no longer fighting for the working class in this country. They're no longer when have you seen policies that advocate Medicare for all on the platform of Joe Biden? It's not there. It's not there. In fact, when those policies are brought up, he makes comments and says, no, he defeated the socialists, meaning Bernie Sanders. But I'll deal with that also later with Bernie Sanders. Let's listen to this video of Lawrence O'Donnell describing how progressives are viewed in the Democratic Party.
I promise you that. I worked within the Democratic Party. I didn't listen.
You know what? I'm going to rewind a little bit.
Don't brains, but are good reasons. Shut up. Turn off your brains.
If you don't show them you're capable of not voting for them, they don't have to listen to you. I promise you that. I worked within the Democratic Party. I didn't listen or have to listen to anything on the left while I was working in the Democratic Party, because the left had nowhere to go. If
Did you hear that? He did not have to listen to anything coming from the left of the Democratic Party because we, the Democrats on the left, progressives, have nowhere to go. Let that sink in. Now, I'm sure that Lawrence O'Donnell would not say this right now as a commentator for MSNBC, but this is in the record. And this is the dirty secret that is known in the Democratic Party. They are more interested in attracting Republicans. In fact, there was a recent article in Politico as recent as 4 days ago that Joe Biden is looking to, or rather his transition committee, are courting Republicans for cabinet slots, cabinet positions. And, you know, if you're in this election in 2020 looking to kick the Republicans out of the White House or kick them out of the Senate, Joe Biden his plans are to bring Republicans into his cabinet. So what are you voting for in the Democratic Party? If the nominee is going to put Republicans in his cabinet, he's not talking about putting Bernie Sanders or progressives like AOC in his cabinet. No, he's talking about putting Republicans in his cabinet because, in a sense, that's what he is. He's a conservative posing as a Democrat. Conservative across the board, supporting the wars, supporting draconian crime legislation, supporting a healthcare industry that does not give a damn about working people, even though 87% of the people in this country are in favor of universal health care or Medicare for all. He's against all of that. He is a wolf in sheep clothing. Now, Donald Trump is a wolf. I'm not voting for him either. But he does not have the clothing on of a sheep to deceive me. Joe Biden is trying to deceive us. Let me show you some more images of Joe Biden.
As you know, there are American...
You and Senator Schumer...
Pull up another video here for you. To show you the record of Joe Biden. Here's Joe Biden early in his career, just to give you an idea of what this man is truly about. Hope the audio's good here.
Senator, I'm sure that you would agree that your service in the Senate up to this point has not reflected any particular concern for the larger contributors.
Well, the fortunate thing is I didn't have many larger contributors, and the only reason... See, I went to the big guys for the money. I was ready to prostitute myself in the manner in which I talk about it.
Look how cavalier and casual he is when he makes that statement, to prostitute himself. We make jokes about politicians prostituting themselves, but here he is, very obviously serious about it.
But what happened was they said, come back when you're 40, son. And so I had to go out. Well, I had to go to a number of small contributors.
Well, I think we're all grateful, Senator. You didn't take no for an answer.
So that's a prime example of the type of character that this man has. But you know what? Here's something more recent. To show you that for decades, Joe Biden has really acted and performed like a Republican. Let me pull this up here. Take a listen.
I hope this crime bill, when it passes, the Biden-Hatch crime bill, as it becomes law, God willing, I hope that we will have ended, once and for all, this notion that is a hangover from the 60s, that somehow Democrats are weak on crime and Democratic presidents are weak on crime and Republicans are tough on crime. The truth is, every major crime bill since 1976 that's come out of this Congress, every minor crime bill has had the name of the Democratic senator from the state of Delaware, Joe Biden, on that bill.
Listen to the level of arrogance and bravado that this man has discussing this legislation. Why is the crime bill, why was it so bad? You know, most of you guys are smart enough to have done the research or heard the devastating effects that legislation had on many families in the African-American community. And I know there's some out there that are going to argue the Congressional Black Caucus supported it. There was black leaders that supported it. Look, it was wrong. It was wrong when they wrote it. And many of those black politicians on the Congressional Black Caucus, like Bobby Rush, have apologized for it. They have seen the devastating effects of that bill on our community, but not this guy. He championed it, he wrote it, and he's unapologetic about it. So here's some more of Joe Biden's response or legislative record.
We must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons.
You hear the level of arrogance. He sounds like, Carl Palladino or what's that other, Congressman King, Donald Trump. He has a tone that is totally insensitive to what's happening in communities and how you deal with crime and rehabilitation. But listen to it a little more.
So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street. That's number one. There's a consensus on that. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now. If we don't,
it doesn't matter that all of the social conditions that lead to people becoming involved in criminal activity, economics, family structure, health care, education, all of those things that make a young person choose a life of crime or criminal activity, or just, a lot of young people who get into trouble, they happen to be born in the wrong neighborhood. They're not criminals, but their neighborhoods are occupied by police force that see the entire community as criminal. In other words, if you're born black, you're criminal coming out your mother's womb. So you must be up to no good if you're walking home from school. I never forget, in Buffalo, a police officer, I have my book bag on, rolled up on the side of me, walking home from school, asking me, what am I doing? Where are you going? Where are you coming from? Questioning me like I did something wrong. A school kid. I think I was in 8th grade. This is the kind of insanity that people are living in, the type of conditions they're living in. And then you have a police force that act like they're occupying a foreign country, treating you like an insurgent living in your own community. They were able to do that because you had politicians like Joe Biden in legislation that really destroyed a lot of lives. So enough of me talking. Let me let you hear some more from Joe Biden.
they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad...
Many of those people, beyond the pale, it doesn't matter.
commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. I'm the guy that said rehabilitation, when it occurs, we don't understand it and notice it. And even when we notice it and we know it occurs, we don't know why. So you cannot make rehabilitation a condition for release. That's why in our system, there's the federal system, you serve 85% of your time. It's a shame, but we don't know how to rehabilitate. But there is a consensus, and I will cease. A, we must make the streets safer. I don't care why someone is a malefactor in society. I don't care why someone is antisocial. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society, try to help them, try to change their behavior. That's why we do in this bill. We have drug treatment and we have other treatments to try to deal with it. But they are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. But we would be absolutely stupid as a society if we didn't recognize the condition that nurtured those folks still exist, and we must deal with that.
This is who we're told we have to vote for. What's crazy is, during the primary process, we had 20 candidates in the Democratic field, and the Democratic Party gave us the most conservative, the oldest, and the candidate with the worst record as the nominee. It's almost like a sick joke. But in a sense, it's a good strategy because the powers behind the Democratic Party, the banks, the pharmaceutical companies that make billions of dollars as a result of legislation that he helped put through, the arms dealers, the major companies that support war in terms of, planes and armaments and bombs. The war industry supported Joe Biden or supports Joe Biden. Those people know that nothing will change. In fact, Joe Biden said in a fundraiser, and this is also an article that you can look up in Politico, held by a Comcast executive, that nothing will fundamentally change if he's elected president. Nothing. But here's some more Joe Biden and his record.
Explaining to do. The new question stemmed.
This goes back to Joe Biden's credibility. Whatever he says on the campaign trail, you need to be leery of that. You need to really be suspect about it because he has a reputation for being a liar. Listen.
From taped remarks of Biden during an April campaign appearance in New Hampshire.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School. I mean, this guy comes off this whole thing as a flyweight.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed him.
If his memory failed him 30 years ago, this might be 40 years ago, because I think this was the 1987 election, what do you think his memory is going to do for him now? The thing that you got to know and understand about Joe Biden is that he will say and do anything to get elected. He will say and do anything off the cuff, even if it's a lie. He is known for this. He has a record of lying. He has lied consistently, even about civil rights. We have time for one more video. Let me show you this, what Joe Biden has said on the issue of civil rights. Don't take my word for it. It's on the record.
When I marched in the civil rights movement, I did not march with a 12-point program. I marched with tens of thousands of others to change attitudes. And we changed attitudes. When I was 17 years old, like many of you, I participated in sit-ins to desegregate the restaurants and movie houses of Wilmington, Delaware. I came out of the civil rights movement. I was one of those guys that sat in and marched and all that stuff. during the 60s, I was, in fact, very concerned about the civil rights movement. I was not an activist. I worked at an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware. I was involved. I was involved in what they were thinking, what they were feeling. I was involved, but I was not out marching. I was not down in Selma. I was not anywhere else. I was a suburbanite kid who got a dose of exposure to what was happening to black Americans when I'm in my own city.
You know, when I was a teenager in Delaware, for real, I got involved in the civil rights movement. We have the 8th largest black population in America. Most people don't know that. And I'd go to 8 o'clock Mass, then I'd go to Reverend Herring's church where we'd meet in order to organize and figure where we were going to go, whether we were going to desegregate the Rialto movie theater or what we were going to do.
He's lying off the cuff. He doesn't even blink. This guy has no credibility. He will say and do anything to get elected. And let me tell you something. I know that people are tired of looking at the crazy antics of Donald Trump. I am too. I think the man has some real psychological issues. But that's beside the point, because rhetoric is one thing, and, you know, he's just a loudmouth. He's just, that's his style. But when you got a snake, a lying snake, someone who will look you in the eye and tell you something like this, straight face. See, Donald Trump, you can see through his lies. I mean, it's obvious. But this guy, he is the definition of a wolf in sheep's clothing.
I got my education for real in the black church. And that's not hyperbole, it's a fact. But I got my education, Reverend Doc, in the black church. Not a joke. Because when we used to get organized on Sundays to go out and desegregate movie theaters and things like that, we do it through the black church. I was no big shakes, Reverend, in the civil rights movement. I was just a kid. I got involved in desegregating movie theaters and helping, you may remember Reverend Moyer in Delaware and Herman Holloway organized voter registration drives, coming out of black churches on Sundays, figuring how we were going to move. And in October, I was invited to the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis to receive the Freedom Award, a thing when I sat in black churches.
Look, you get the idea. All right, pathological liar, over and over again. Joe Biden will say and probably do anything to get your vote. And you notice, it's only a concern in the black community, or rather the biggest concern with politicians in the black community is always your right to vote for them. You get it? Like, it's never a non-election year and Democrat politicians come out in droves for concern for black people. Now, you might say, well, Mike, that's kind of strong. I mean, the Democratic Party has given us the Voting Rights Act, which helps them, the Democrats. Public Accommodations Act, well, that was great in that it desegregated everything, but it really destroyed an entire black economy in our community because our businesses closed and other businesses took over because now they could take our dollar. But that's a whole nother point. The point that I want to make is the legislation and the policies that we've seen have been very beneficial to the Democratic Party. Then you get stuff like this. I mean, this is the biggest insult to see the Congress come out with kente cloth, bowing or kneeling, or I don't know what. I think this was when they said they were doing the 8 seconds to honor George Floyd. You got to understand that theater is happening here. Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Congress have literally performed or legislated on the largest transfer of wealth in the history of this country in the form of the CARES Act. $5 trillion have gone to big banks and corporations. And the average American family got one check, a crumb, for $1,200. The real unemployment rate in this country is like 50%. 60% of businesses that have closed are closing permanently. They bail out the banks. The Democratic Party that is supposed to care about the working class in this country are in the pocket of Wall Street, of Big Pharma, of the arms industry. They're in their pocket. This is why nothing has changed fundamentally from one administration to the next, Democrat or Republican. Back to Joe Biden, I want everybody to know that I, as a former supporter of Bernie Sanders, I'm very disappointed with Bernie Sanders because even though he supported or supports Joe Biden, he got nothing out of the deal, nothing. Nothing at all. And they are ignoring him. And every opportunity that Joe Biden gets, he shows total disrespect for Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has essentially become a sheepdog, really, for the Democratic Party because he herded all of us progressives and people that want to see real, true change in this country over to the back to the party, really, in hopes that he would be a nominee that champions policies. You got to understand, most of the people that supported Bernie Sanders, they didn't support him as an individual. They supported him because he supported policies that most people care about. Not him, not his cult of personality, not his, him as an individual. It's the policies. But now his policy is endorsing Joe Biden, a man that does not give a damn about this community. He only cares about our community. He only cares about progressives when we're voting for Republican-esque Democrats. And Joe Biden is a conservative Democrat, so I will not be supporting him. In my next video, I'm going to tell you who I'm going to support. I have my ballot right here. I'll be dropping this off tomorrow. I will be supporting Howie Hawkins of the Green Party. I hope that you do some research on Howie Hawkins. Look at the platform of the Green Party. Just like Lawrence O'Donnell said in that video, which is more than 20 years old before he became a commentator, they will not listen to you until you withhold your vote. They will not pay you any attention. And as long as we keep electing people who don't care anything about our interests, they will continue to give us what we've been getting, which is nothing. Look, thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Click the button, click the like button if you want to see more videos like this, and leave your comments. Let's engage. Let's have this conversation. There are 10 days to go before Election Day. I appreciate your time, and thank you for watching.